Family business makes no sense. So let's talk about it.
Welcome. I'm Jon Kenfield, the Family Business Solutionist, broadcasting from Melbourne in Australia. Today is yet another episode in the series Family Business Makes No Sense. And today I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome and why it is a common cause of conflict in family business. Now, on any rational analysis, nobody would choose to place their family in their business, because the things that make for a happy family conflict almost entirely with the things that make businesses successful. However, there are an awful lot of family businesses around, and there always have been since Adam was a boy. And some of them are very good. However, an awful lot more are troubled, and a great many fail. And what we are trying to do is look at what is the difference between successful businesses and the could have been successful businesses. And I think one of the key issues is businesses that survive for multiple generations, where family members actually want to socially interact with others out of the workplace, are businesses that are aware of the risk of conflict and take active steps to minimize or manage the conflicts that inevitably arise over the years for every family in business. And in doing that, they make sense of being a family in business. And so today, the imposter syndrome is yet another of the 50 common causes of conflict that we're talking about to help you manage the risk of conflict in your family business. This is, like the founder syndrome in the previous video, something you won't necessarily find in a book of pure psychological syndromes, but you will find it in a lot of the literature surrounding family business, and you'll certainly hear about it if you're in meetings of advisors to family businesses or perhaps victims of family business. It is a psychological condition. It is a mental, emotional state that afflicts certain individuals as a consequence of being overwhelmed by feelings that they do not deserve the success they have had, the status they have achieved, the position that they hold, the loyalty that they demand. And so, irrespective of the evidence to the contrary, or perhaps the evidence in confirmation, these guys feel like imposters because they don't feel they deserve to be in the position that they are in. And this is irrespective of how much material and observable success they've had. They themselves do not feel worthy. Now, this is not the same as being humble. Humble is great. Humble is manageable and often is justifiable and can be quite admirable. Imposter syndrome is debilitating. It impairs the ability, particularly of leaders, to be effective. And once imposter syndrome has taken a hold of somebody through usually their work in the family business, it can spread into an adverse impact on every aspect of their life. So we have a person who feels like a fraud. They do not feel as though they inhabit the skin that belongs to them, and they do not feel that for whatever reason they deserve to be in the position they're in or the success they have got. So what do they do about it? Well, they become fearful. And when they become fearful, they tend to try to obscure what they perceive to be the reality. They disguise themselves. They hide behind false bravado. They may spend a lot of money to prove to the outside world that they are great, whereas inside, they don't feel that's what they should be doing. Now, ultimately, this can lead to a form of ultra defensiveness. which creates a risk aversion. It creates an inability to trust other people, and it prevents leaders from delegating authority and responsibility to others to spread the load and to improve the general quality of management and decision making. One of the characteristics of imposter syndrome is to try to prevent anybody else realizing that the imposter is in fact an imposter. So what they do is work harder than anybody should ever try to work, and ultimately they can end up with burnout. In the process, they create a culture of ludicrous overwork and overextension, which can create burnout in a lot of other staff as well, because they are supportive of the leader and they are receptive to the culture that they create. And if the culture is a reflection of the chaos in the imposter's mind and emotional state, then that's going to translate into the workplace not in helpful ways. Imposters become guilty of micromanagement. They try to get involved in everything because, as I said before, they don't trust anybody to get it right, and they feel they need to keep on validating and proving their own worth so nobody thinks that they are unworthy. There's a lot of crossover with narcissism, which was the subject of an earlier video here. The problem for the business is that all of this composite of negative consequences can create decision paralysis or micromanagement at a very low operational level, and ultimately a complete neglect of attention to the more important big picture strategic requirements of the business, which places the entire future of the business at risk. The imposter will create a culture of disempowerment and low psychological safety because that's how they themselves feel. And where the imposter, if they're a business leader or founder, has huge energy and passion, which may sustain them through that low psychological safety, and they can create enormous barriers so nobody realizes just how vulnerable they actually feel, that doesn't work for ordinary humans. And so individuals start to become highly insecure. The workplace starts to become a place subject to conflict, harassment, depression, and all those other things. And combine that with all the overwork we were talking about previously, and you have a recipe for massive burnout on a global scale. So imposter syndrome, whilst on the one hand it sounds as though it should be limited to the imposter themselves and not have much of an impact on anyone else, in reality it can set the culture for the whole organisation and put the entire organisation at risk, and most certainly create a bottleneck and a chokehold on potential growth. So that's all well and good. What are you going to do about it? What are the strategies and solutions that you can apply to help somebody with imposter syndrome to deal with it in a constructive way? Well, the first thing you need to do is try to provide feedback and provide coaching and mentoring support that shifts the individual into more of a growth mindset, where they are receptive to the idea of learning and the idea of change, because all of that involves self-reflection, and it also should involve assessing reality, objective proof, objective evidence of success, which can then be measured against the imposter sense of failure. Now, you don't have to address this head on, but you can do it through things like review meetings, by providing validation, confirmation, again, like the narcissist, providing confirmation that things are going well and that the success that the organisation is getting is actually deserved. So what we're trying to do is normalise and rationalise and objectify the real world and bring that into connection with the imposter's view of the world, which is a self-generated emotional construct. The other sort of thing that you can really do is to practice trusting and delegating. Give the imposter proof that you can trust other people to do things. Maybe start very small, but at least start to do things that show them that the way they're feeling and the way they're seeing the world is simply not supported by verifiable facts, is not supported by the way that other people see them, and should not be supported by the negative way in which they see themselves. If you can do that, you may help somebody to turn their imposter syndrome into a sense of comfort in their own skin, which is where most people should and perhaps deserve to live. If you found this useful, please like it, please share it with others who you think may get some benefit, and please let others know about this series of videos which try to capture the things that we believe we've learned over more than 30 years of working with families in business to help them make sense of being in a family business. From Jon Kenfield, the Family Business Solutionist in Melbourne, Australia, thanks for watching.